800 and, oh wait, never mind. Yeah, 840, no, 572 mentions. Oh, they have the Pence audio in this article. $12 minutes.
There are two types of companies, those who are great at AI and everybody else.
Wow.
You start a company and you...
Mo Brooks, gentleman from Alabama. Okay.
Quick comment and then
Was this like a closed session in Congress, or?
a question. The issue is the illegal voting right here in front of you, Mike.
Hey, Mom.
By way of background, in my first election in 1982, the Democrats rigged 25% of the voting machines to vote for everybody on the ballot but me. That was 11 out of 45 machines. The whole state was Democrat. So while it was an admission of the rigging of the voting machines, nothing was done to fix it. In September of this past year, 5 weeks before the election, by way of background, Alabama has a state statute that requires proof of citizenship before you can register to vote. And there are over a dozen documents you can produce. The United States Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia entered an order barring the state of Alabama, Kansas, and I believe another state from enforcing their law requiring proof of citizenship before you can register to vote, which opened a huge floodgate for illegals and others to register to vote. So I perceive that the president may be spot on as he's identifying this voter fraud problem, although we can't really finalize the...
Anybody know which lawmaker this is right now talking?
What we do to help you, the White House, the president, first, have a requirement that only American citizens can vote in federal elections, and then second, that only those persons who are registered to vote are the ones who actually vote on election day.
Well, thank you, Bob. And I think the president certainly expressed his concerns on this issue as recently as the last 24 hours. And the commitment that we all have, you heard him reflect on it again today, we have an obligation to preserve our democratic institutions and the democratic process. And what I can tell you is that I would anticipate that the administration is going to initiate and a full evaluation of voting rolls in the country, the overall integrity of our voting system in the wake of this past election, just because so many Americans share the concern you have, I have, the president certainly has, about people being registered in multiple states. And I think it was the Pew Research Center that came out about 4 years ago, literally found millions of people on the rolls improperly all over the country. That very fact alone should give all of us pause, and you can anticipate that we'll be looking for ways to work with you to simply look into it, to follow the facts, see where the facts go, but that one person, one vote principle is at the very heart of this republic and of our democratic institutions, and it must be defended.
Well, I pledge to support you in any way I can, and just one caveat in case anyone's curious, we still won that election in 1982, but it made it a whole lot tougher.
Thanks, Mom.
Okay, very good.
It's going to be more of the same, right? Where Pence is just saying like, oh, you've got the right to investigate and blah, blah, blah.
Okay, very good. Thanks. So Ron DeSantis, Florida.
Welcome, Mr. Vice President. As you know, we've dealt for the last several years with the IRS targeting scandal. Federal courts have said they're still targeting. They haven't changed it. Many of us led an effort to try to remove the IRS commissioner. He testified under oath before Congress that whoever, this was before the election, whoever would win, he'd be happy to tender his resignation. So my question for you is, have you guys discussed that? Do you support getting a new IRS commissioner in there? Does the president? Because this is a very troubled agency, and this guy has stonewalled us every step of the way. So my plea to you is to tell the president, get his resignation, and let's start anew.
I'll carry that back, and we can talk further. I can tell you that I and certainly all of us.
Okay, we don't care about this. Okay. Actually, you know what? Fuck it, we'll throw it in here. January 27th, 2017. probably going to go through every single mention in this report of him to see if I'm missing anything. Okay. The Vice President's counsel, Greg Jacob, testified about the concern that the Vice President might be asked improperly to echo such a false statement. I want to hear this testimony. This is annotation 45. Fuck me, this is still loading. Okay, we'll talk to Paul. Holy fucking loading times. Hi, what's up, babe?
Good sir.
How you doing?
I'm doing well. I appreciate being called babe like 5 times over the course of our conversation.
Have I called you babe that much?
At least 3,
Oh.
at least 4.
I'm sorry.
I appreciate it. Well, listen. I appreciate your extremely positive response to my most recent video, number 1, that I saw you reacting to earlier.
It was okay.
It is still interesting that in 2024, there are people who deny the philosophical wisdom of Jordan Peterson, pre-Daily Wire Jordan Peterson.
I mean, I think he was good at speaking. I think he was relatively insightful. But man, it's hard listening to him now, taking anything he says before seriously. Or I could understand why somebody might hear him now and be skeptical that anything he said prior to the brainworm stuff was worth listening to. But
Yeah, I understand that too. Post Daily Wire Peterson is the worst. But it sounded like you were not even aware that those lectures existed. Like the point about what do you call it? Fundamentalists have a literalist interpretation of the Bible, and they think that their interpretation is therefore correct, even though they have subjectivity.
yeah, I wasn't aware of that particular thing, but I know he said a lot of stuff that's insightful. Like I give him a lot of credit for. I think prior to 2017, whenever the C16 stuff like started, is when he started to head off in that direction. But prior to like 2017, 2018, he generally has some pretty good stuff to say. Yeah,
I would agree. I would say it's been certainly fundamentally transformative for me, at least. And I suspect, have you watched like his lectures and his interviews, or
yeah, some of them, but
or is it mostly his like political takes?
I would
Forget
say
the interviews, the lectures in particular.
Over the past couple years, mainly his political stuff, but in the in the past, I've watched some of his. He's got a lot of material out there. I've seen a decent amount, but I'm sure there's more that I haven't seen than I have seen.
That's fair. Well, great. Is there anything that you want to talk about in particular?
Well, not necessarily. Wait, was I supposed to bring the topics? I thought you had something you wanted to talk about in particular.
Well, like I said, I was watching your reaction. The whole point about pragmatism and people being too autistically focused on definitions.
Sure.
You yourself pointed that out. I was laughing, by the way, as soon as the video ended. Someone can timestamp the reaction, but you said something like, as soon as I concede that H2O is part of water, it's officially, I've conceded the debate. Some of the women.
Mm-hmm.
It was pretty good.
Thank you. I think a lot of my arguments come off as autistic because I'm usually critiquing the other side. But one of my central complaints for a lot of these conversations is that you never actually get to any good conversation ever. So people will hear me give a counter to something and they'll think that because they instantly assume that my position is completely, totally on the other end. So there is no good conversation. So for instance, I can understand how you can listen to probably even a decent number of my arguments and come away thinking that, Stephen thinks that there is no value in socially constructed things, or that if you can't discreetly analyze some piece of matter under a microscope, it has, no meaning and no value and it doesn't matter. But on the contrary, I argue like social constructions are probably the most important things in our lives. Individual bits and pieces of matter and individual groupings of things aren't as important as like the social phenomenon of Game of Thrones and Breaking Bad, or, huge rites of passage for young children becoming adults, or, things like marriage or any of these things. And yeah, these are, I don't think marriage is a feature of the universe. I think it's probably a largely constructed, relationship category, but I think it's an incredibly important thing. So, but you never get to have those conversations because I think that the other side is so down in the weeds on some dumb shit. And then to try to like move them out of that is the only part of the conversation I'm ever capable of having. Yeah.
Yeah, that's fair. Did you like the point about transjectivity? Or did you kind of zone out there at the end?
Transjectivity. Wait, was that like a joke at the very, very end, or?
No, it's not a joke. It was the last 1 minute or so. It was the resolution of the whole problem of subjective versus objective, universals versus particulars. And I agree that dichotomy is simplified to some degree, but truth is not objective, truth is not subjective, truth is transjective. It's an interplay between the object and the subject.
Oh.
And so it's like, well, is marriage fundamental category, is a universal category? It's like, well, it all comes down to utility and pragmatism, which is sort of in line with Wittgenstein, which is, I believe, someone that you're vaguely familiar with. Did you have a Wittgenstein arc or something?
No, I've just had some people say this sounds like Wittgenstein, so I say, oh yeah, this does. But I've never read anything by him, so
that's fair. Are you? JJ McCullough told me not to have a philosophical conversation, but I'm inclined to do the opposite.
Wait, with me or in general?
Yeah. Well, just in general,
oh,
JJ
okay.
hates philosophy.
That's good. Based, true. Fuck philosophy.
Well, that's the thing. Well, one of the key tenets of my worldview is anti-intellectualism is based, which is why I produce the League of Politics videos instead of, all this Wikipedia research stuff.
Okay. What does anti-intellectualism mean to you?
It means exactly what you just said. JJ is based for not caring about philosophy.
Okay. When I say JJ is based for not caring about philosophy, what is your interpretation of that? What do you think I mean when I say that?
Philosophy is largely a bunch of semantic disagreements between people who have a very autistic view of the world.
Okay. I say it a little bit, but I say it a bit tongue in cheek. Philosophy has a lot of important concepts.
When I say anti-intellectualism is based, I also say.
Okay, sure. Well, but that's not. I can't say surely you mean that because there are some people that like literally.
Yeah, that's fair. I guess just to step back, how familiar are you with my channel? Because I was one of the more interesting moments of when you were reacting to my video. I think it was towards the beginning. You're like, "Oh, I thought this guy was retarded. He actually knows what he's talking about." So what are you familiar with?
Well, I've seen your league stuff, which is very good. I think you could have been a really big content creator if you would have existed like 8 years ago, when like the League of Legends subreddit was blowing up and League memes and all that were happening. The Sky Williams and all the other shit was out there.
That's right, Sky Williams.
Yeah, Trick 2G and all
Ribbon Main, Diamond.
Yeah, all the stuff, all the good memes back then. And
is it not as popular anymore?
I don't think so. No. I feel like careers were made in that League of Legends subreddit, but it feels like that stuff is not as popular anymore. Yeah.
Well, in some sense, I'm those videos appeal to the what do you call it? The knowledge base that people had from playing League. You can make very strong metaphor. League is complicated enough where it's a rich enough world where you can draw, interesting metaphors and whatnot, like a toggle ability, for example. Mm-hmm. That type of stuff is. People have that knowledge base, and then doing the video game analogies, drawing from that knowledge base, whether or not it's popular.
Sure.
I'm just trying to make the best points that I can.
No, yeah, I understand. I'm just saying that when League was more popular and people were watching things, it would have been a higher chance of like getting more people to engage. But no, I understand what you're saying.
That's fair. Well, talking to you right now.
True. And then I think we had a political conversation at one point, and the only thing that stuck in my mind was like, oh, this guy's like every side is the same and everything is the same and epic. And I'm like, okay, well, and 99% of the time those people are fucking retarded, so, you know.
Yeah, I was going to say that perception of me is as accurate as someone like Anthony Fantano's perception of you. How about that?
Wow. Okay.
Okay, well, because I guess, well, first off, did you, I saw you reacted, I posted your reaction to my video, the Destiny Champion Spotlight. Did you feel that it was a fair representation of you?
I thought it was pretty funny, yeah. In terms of fair representation, I mean, it depends.
Not funny. Obviously, it was funny. Everything I do is what I want it to be. Hilarious.
Sure.
But
when we do comedy and humor, when we say, was it fair? I mean, I have to dive a lot into what the joke is when you're saying it versus how I would interpret the joke versus how I think your audience would interpret the joke versus your understanding of all those interpretations. So, like, if I'm in front of two audiences, like I could, I think all of these are different. So I could say something like, oh, so Donald Trump just became president, and he finally got to enact his Muslim ban. So no more Muslims in the country anymore. Based that Donald Trump got rid of all the Muslims, finally, based. If I were to say that in front of a left-leaning audience, they would laugh because Donald Trump and banning Muslims is evil and crazy, and the fact that he would like do that so blatantly, that would be like the joke. If I said it in front of a conservative audience, they would laugh because they think it's genuinely cool that he did it, and he's like being so open and outward about it. And then so when I'm saying it, like whatever my intention is, like depending on who I'm in front of and how they interpret it, like all of these things play. So all of this to say that when you ask me, was it fair? There are interpretations where everything you said was fair, and there are interpretations where I would staunchly disagree, but I'm not familiar enough with you or your audience to know how I would interpret those things.
That's fair.
Makes sense.
Did you think it was an accurate representation of reality to have the Dr. Destiny Mr. Borelli toggle?
Maybe. I would have to go back and watch it particularly. I don't remember coming away thinking like, God, that's just he's so wrong, like being upset about it. So yeah.
You were, I think you were distracted while you were reacting to it, which is
wow.
That's okay. I forgive you.
Well,
you go back and watch.
Okay.
But like the point of those. I mean, you agree that comedy has to be in contact with reality, right?
Not only do I agree with it, every single person agrees with this. People
Right.
don't realize sometimes that they agree with it because they get into literally autistic arguments. But yes, comedy has to have some reference to reality. Otherwise, it's not fucking funny. I find most often people will say things like, it's just a joke when they don't want to acknowledge like the underlying connection or something. But yeah, of course, for sure. Comedy has to have some connection to reality, yeah.
Yeah, and the degree to which something is funny is definitely parameterized by the degree to which it's true. Because if you try to make like a propagandistic joke, it falls flat immediately.
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah. Yeah. And especially when you're doing parody and satire based on League of Legends, right? Like if you can show something that's true about me and true about like top lane or something in League at the same time, right? That's like an extra
fun. Or to use, like I was saying with the toggle ability, like that's a mechanic that people understand and you can toggle back and forth. I guess my question is, because you are one of the more significant figures in the online political space, I guess I'm curious to understand sort of your approach to things, how you see things, the degree to which I guess you're aware of the criticisms that people have of you and the degree to which you have a great deal of strength. Like, for example, your passive Cult of Destiny, obviously, as fans of cult-based and stuff like that, it's like, okay. Jordan Peterson, surely not immune from that criticism. I don't think anyone of any level of, notoriety is immune to that criticism. But the point I was making is you, and I'm curious if you think this is true, you canvassed for, was it Ossoff and Warnock? Was it both of them? Or
in Georgia, yeah. Originally it was just
Both
Ossoff because I didn't want to do Warnock because I don't like black people, but then I was like, fuck, I should probably do both, so yeah.
This is good comedy.
Thank you.
So I don't recall, I didn't follow it too much, but it was a razor thin runoff. It was a runoff, so naturally it had to be razor thin. And you did a bunch of canvassing down there.
Yeah.
So what do you think is the probability that you single-handedly flipped those seats for the Democrats, which then in turn flipped the entire Senate for the Democrats.
I think we had a guy that went through and did a numbers analysis, and I don't think it was close enough for that to have been the case. I think that we definitely impacted the districts that we canvassed in. It seemed like we did. But I think that even though it was close, I don't think it was close enough that I could say that, like, oh yeah, I think we single-handedly were the reason why we won this.
Well, that's why I put single-handedly. Obviously, nothing can be single-handedly.
Sure.
But
Or what I mean is that, like, absent our efforts, looking mathematically at the votes that possibly we affected through our canvassing, if you removed all of those, I think they both would have still won.
well, obviously, that's fair. You can't know that for sure, right? So
Well, what I'm saying, okay, so let me, to be more precise.
Probabilistically.
Well,
what is the percent chance that you made a fundamental difference? Like 5%?
What I'm saying is that I
1%,
think we
0?
compared like the districts before and after the runoff and the areas that we canvassed in to see how many votes more we think we got based on our canvassing efforts. In the areas that we canvassed, we removed all of the extra votes that we think might have been attributed to our campaigning based off of the prior results. Even with those removed, I think they still would have won. That's what I mean when I say I don't think that we affected the outcome. But I mean, it's possible it could have been more significantly swayed one direction or another. But
that's what I'm saying. What is the probability, if you had to put a percentage, the probability that you made?
That we were that absent us we would have lost.
Or like 10%?
I would say easily under 5, probably under 1 or 2% would be my guess.
Okay. Which, still having a one out of 100 chance to affect the entire political structure of the United States is not insignificant.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I guess just more broadly on that, do you plan on doing more? I mean, you did canvassing recently. If you didn't think it would, would you say it was a success?
Yeah, for sure. But you don't always know. I don't always know, like, the impact. This is a retrospective, right? Like,
yeah.
I can't know prospectively if this would be the difference or not, yeah.
Is your plan to do more canvassing on, like, tough elections? I know you did
probably, yeah.
In Ohio or something?
Yeah. Got a couple events coming up, yeah.
Okay. Well, that's admirable. But that's my point about, cult of destiny. Rally your followers to go actually make a tangible difference in the world.
Yeah.
And so the Dr. Destiny, Mr. Borelli thing, it's like, it's a fairly straightforward question.
Okay.
Are you aware of the degree to which you undermine your own goals?
Probably not. But I think that there is a little bit of a begging the question, I would imagine here.
What are your goals?
Yeah, exactly. Because typically when people say you're undermining your own goals, that usually means more that their perception of what my goals are is probably different than my perception of what my goals are. So they view me as undermining what they think my goals are rather than me undermining what I think my actual goals are. I think there are times where I undermine my goals for sure.
Yeah.
But sometimes I don't think it's when other people say, like, oh, you're ruining yourself this way. I'm like, I don't think so. Maybe something that you would want, but not something that I'm looking for.
That's fair. Well, that's probably what you just described is probably the camp I fall in, my perception of your goals. Because the way I see it, the point of that joke was Dr. Destiny. In Dr. Destiny mode, I mean, you are... these are, I would say, objectively true.
Oh, objectively, okay. Sorry, go ahead.
To the same degree that Jordan Peterson is objectively one of the best philosophers of all time.
Gotcha.
Maybe transjectively true, let's say.
Transjectively true, okay.
Clearly one of the most intelligent people on this platform. You're capable of extreme empathy. You are able to have basically any conversation with anyone, which I think, like, for example, obviously this all went sideways, but like your conversations with Nick Fuentes, had they been able to continue and, whatever, all kinds of things went wrong with that were sort of outside of your control. It's like, I would say those are objectively good. Those are objectively good de-radicalizing conversations that bring people back from the edge. You're on the left. I think you fulfill an important role of stopping people who would otherwise be in, like, Hassan's camp from going to Hassan's camp, right? Because you can clearly state, like, of course I'm not for banning the ability of transgender people to get the surgery or whatnot, but that doesn't mean I'm now a socialist or whatever, right? So you fulfill an important function, and at your best, you are a very useful tool for many people in figuring out the truth. My background, for what it's worth, I was a big fan of Jordan Peterson.
Noticed, yeah.
Yeah, as you can tell.
Yeah.
to the point where I would say, unironically, I literally don't disagree with him on anything, because the things that he would be wrong about, he himself acknowledges and he qualifies, and he's like, well, I don't know if this is true, but blah, blah, blah. So I was like, he's literally 100% right. There's almost nothing I disagree with him on. I see now in hindsight the limitations of that.
Sure. I mean, I feel like, broadly speaking, like C16 stuff, I think I would probably agree. I don't know if I've seen anything of his where I'm like, oh, he's super wrong. Generally, he would match his conviction with the statements he was making, usually.
You didn't see anything where he was super wrong? How about when you talked to him and he said...
I said prior to C16, the whole Bill C16 shit, before that. After that, I think he's off. And
I think... Okay, well, I would say Daily Wire is the key.
Sure, okay, yeah.
The Kathy Newman interview was post Bill C16, and Kathy Newman interview is Peterson at its best, in my opinion.
Okay,
but anyway,
I disagree, but go ahead, yeah.
That's fair. Well, we can get into that. But like, my point is, you talking to him and then having him say, what did he say? Well, there's 20% excess deaths in Europe. It's like, okay, and you can just say qualitatively that this is because of the vaccine. He's like, well, what do you think it is? It's like, the whole Kathy Newman interview, his famous line, or one of the lines was like, you never do a univariate analysis when you're talking about like the gender pay gap.
Yeah.
It's like, you just did a univariate analysis. How embarrassing, how cringe univariate analysis. And it's like, well, okay, you're very good at, pushing back and getting people to, what do you call it? Prove that they don't know what they're talking about. And like the other one, the Twitter files debate, I think you were doing some end of the year like recap.
Sure.
And it was like, I think your audience like votes on best meme, best debate, or something like that. The best meme was the one of, it was the Joker with Nick Fuentes voiceover, and it's like Destiny says the N-word. I like that. You're gonna love me. Epic.
That was a good meme. Yeah.
But anyway, one of the top debate was like the Twitter files debate, and I never read the Twitter files, obviously. And I was like, okay, wait a second. What do I think about the Twitter files right now? My thing is like, well, basically the Biden administration used the intelligence agencies included with Twitter to censor people and all that stuff. And like right off the bat, like 15 minutes in the debate, it was pointed out, the Trump administration made requests. I was like, oh, okay. I didn't know that. I would have thought this was in the Biden administration only. And so I was like, all right, I'm glad I'm not going to read the Twitter files. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to take the person who I trust to give the best opposition argument to a perspective I already agree with. I'll just watch them duke it out, and then I'll observe the conversation. Just go, oh, he seems right on that. He seems wrong on that. And like when it got to the Hunter Biden laptop thing, you kind of gave a hypothetical steel man of the intelligence agencies, and I was like, yeah, I find that very compelling. So I'm more certain now that the FBI engaged in manipulative behavior to censor the Hunter Biden laptop story or whatnot. But like, both of those things get derived from just watching you go at your best.
Okay.
That's Dr. Destiny. And then Mr. Borelli. Mr. Borelli is... It seems like Mr. Borelli undermines Dr. Destiny to a significant degree. Right? Like, there's a lot of people who would listen to you. And who I would want to listen to you, who don't, because you say, I think, stuff that even you would acknowledge is like insane and sociopathic and less than moral.
Okay.
Would you agree with that?
Would I agree with the statement that there are some people that would listen to me if I didn't say some things? Yeah, some people would otherwise listen to me, but don't because of rhetoric I engage in. Yeah, for sure. Absolutely, yeah.
That's a very different framing of how I framed it. I'm specifically pointing at the whole meme of the Mr. Borelli it's insane. Like some of the crazy shit. Like the firefighter. Whatever. It's like, okay. First off, what would I say? I've talked to Vosh. I talked to Andrew Wilson. I'm sure I'll have the misfortune of talking to Nick Fuentes at some point. I'm less interested in policing rhetoric as trying to genuinely understand. When you're on the Bridges podcast and you say to JJ McCullough or Mr. Beat, the problem is the temperature is turned up too much. Conservatives and progressives have a caricature of one another, and there's a very large middle ground of reasonable people who could, come together on solve important issues. That's almost verbatim what you say.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's like, okay, then you say the shit about the firefighter. I don't know which Destiny form I'm talking to often or watching. It's like, is your goal to bridge the gap? Do you believe that conservatives are caricatured and that's a problem? Or do you think that if they go to a Trump rally, they deserve what they get?
Deserve no sympathy.
Well, but you can.
No, I understand.
Surely you understand from my perception, how it's hard to square those two.
Yeah, I understand. So I think this is the challenge in doing what I do, where I'm trying to be relatively politically, ideologically independent in how I operate, meaning I'm not just trying to talk to only liberals or only progressives or only people that agree with me. I'm trying to talk to people that disagree with me. There's a special challenge there in weighing how combative do I want to be versus how not accepting, not charitable, there's a word I'm looking for. It's not empathetic. Do I want to be combative or do I want to be a bit more
charitable?
People are saying tolerant. Maybe agreeable. And there's a strength to both approaches, and there's a big negative to both approaches, and I have to constantly reinterpret and reweigh these things as like time passes to see if I am effecting some kind of outcome that I think is good. And there are big moments sometimes where I think I don't like the direction I've headed and I need a violent course correction because I haven't been calibrating correctly, leading up to something. That's, I would say. I would say that like an analogy for this might be, have you ever heard of the idea of like parents that let their teenage children drink in the basement? The idea that like, well, I don't really want my kid to drink, but if he's going to drink, fuck it, do it at my house. You're not up to know it, right?
I was friends with people whose parents were like that, much to my benefit.
Yeah. On its face, like we can understand that parent is having a Mr. Borelli versus Dr. Destiny moment where I don't want my children to drink or be up to no good, but like I'm going to condone underage drinking because I think that the benefit of doing it in this way outweighs not doing it. But we can imagine so many things along that spectrum that would be insane, right? That somebody might say like, oh yeah, well, if my kids are going to drink, I'd rather at least have them fucking drink here. And you're like, oh, okay, fine. And then you walk downstairs and you see that like the parents have like a fully staffed fucking bar with like a bartender.
Cocaine and hookers and shit.
Yeah, maybe they bring in some cocaine. And you're like, okay, wait a second, hold on. This is way too much, right? And then you can imagine a world where yeah, somebody gets, intoxicated too much for the first time, they throw up, but it was like in the parents' basement, and they're like, hey, this is why you shouldn't do this shit. Like I told you guys, like you fucking like this is whatever, right? Where they're it's like more managed or whatever, right? We can see all of that on a spectrum. And yeah, the way that I engage with people is somewhere on that spectrum. Where in a perfect world, when I'm talking to somebody like a Jordan Peterson, what I really want to do is on every single statement you make, this is so fucking stupid. And we're going to break down exactly why it's stupid. And you need to justify every single premise here before we get to your conclusion, because all of them are wrong, right? But if I'm that combative, right? If I'm the parent that says, if I even see you take a sip of alcohol around me, you're out of here, okay? I don't care if you got to be a ward of the state or what, get the fuck out of my house, right? That hardcore approach,